A design that screams to the world, hey everyone, I'm a BMW, look at me. That's not cool.
Now, these things are at the age where it's not really a case of what goes wrong, it's more of a case of how the hell has it survived.
Yes, these are iconic, but surely that's just all hype, isn't it? How are these aging after 30 years? What do they actually like to live with and drive now? Should you ever seriously consider buying one? Most critically, but what actually goes wrong with them? How about we start with the exterior? Okay, the first big issue here, which is killing loads of these, is unfortunately rust. This does impact a lot of cars from cold climates with salted roads. Where do you need to check for rust? It's just there, the whole car. But seriously though, firstly, check around the entire windscreen, especially in these bottom corners and along this bottom edge. You can get a little tool to pry up the rubber seal here and look underneath the entire windscreen. Check around the sunroof because the drainage holes can block and then retain water and create corrosion. Check all of the wheel arches, pop the bonnet and check along the top of the quarter panels, check along the bottoms of the doors, get underneath and look under the rear bumper. Also while you're underneath, check for rust around the rear subframe, near the jacking points and along the sills. Also when you're in the engine bay, check the battery tray and also the suspension towers. Also check the suspension towers in the boot, and while you're in the boot, lift up the floor and look around the whole floor area. And lastly, check the footwells and around the seatbelt mounting points. In saying all that, the post-update E30s, they have far better corrosion resistance, although they're still far from perfect. Then there are electrical issues that you can expect with the age of these, lighting playing up, power windows not working. That's all pretty common. Another common complaint, not just with E30s, but with all cars, is how expensive OEM wiper blades can be. Luckily, WiperTech can help with that. Hit the link down there to get 15% off and free express shipping on some of the best wiper blades we've ever used. The door handles can have some issues because the plastic parts can become brittle and break to the point that the door handles don't work anymore. The wiper motors and the linkages, they can have issues and it can be an absolute nightmare to fix. The good news though is a lot of parts, even body panels, are available for these pretty readily, so fixing one shouldn't be too much of a headache. Also, with many of these being purchased by people that enjoy a very spirited drive, make sure you check for any accident damage or dodgy repair work. To spot that sort of stuff, go and watch our Ultimate Used Car Buyer's Guide. It could save you thousands. Did you know the E30 in 325iX form was the very first BMW to feature all-wheel drive? In fact, the E30 featured a host of firsts for BMW, and many consider the E30 to be the most important car in BMW's history, being the car that really put the German brand on the map as a truly premium manufacturer. Now, the critical to know stuff, the E30 was BMW's second generation of 3 Series, and it was produced from 1982 to 1994. BMW constantly honed the E30 all the way through its life cycle, especially in 1985, but most substantially in 1987, which is often referred to as the Series 2. And a hot tip, the easiest way to spot a Series 2 is the lack of chrome trim on the bumpers. As far as body styles go, you can have a 2-door coupe and a 4-door saloon or sedan, as well as a touring or wagon and a cabriolet or cabriolet. As far as engines go, officially you're going to have a choice of 4 and 6 cylinders, including a diesel variant internationally. However, unofficially, think of an engine and chances are someone has crammed it in here. Turbocharged Nissan 4 cylinders, Toyota straight 6s, LS V8s, BMW V8s, V10s and even V12s and rotaries. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if someone out there has a steam-powered E30. In fact, even though this actual car was originally packing a 1.6 litre 4-cylinder, it's now powered by BMW's M54 B30 3-litre straight 6, which you'll originally find under the bonnet of the E46 330i and E39 530i. Now, the model designations generally relate to what is powering the car, although sometimes that can change. As far as Australia goes, we received 12 variants, although there were a few special editions just to spice things up. Although in saying that, thanks to the wonderful world of imports, a host of other variants have become available. We're talking a host of country-specific models, the various M3s, and the factory-modified examples from Alpina, Ack Schnitzel, and Hart G. Just on those M3s as well, look, they deserve their very own video, and we'll make one of those when one of you lends it to us. For this video, we're just going to be focusing on the more attainable models. Also, being a BMW, the list of factory optional extras is near endless, and these things are huge in the aftermarket scene. So no matter what you want to do with your E30, being it track racing, rally, resto mods, drifting, just making a really beautiful street car, there's going to be a community to support you. And speaking of those communities, guys, thank you so much. You have been so amazingly helpful with researching this video. We couldn't have done this without you. Legends. Now, depending on what you want to do with your E30 is going to define the pricing. If you're looking for a tired old project car like an early 318i, you're going to be looking at say $10,000 to $15,000 here in Australia. At the other end of the spectrum, a mint condition recent 325i, they range from $50,000 to even $70,000. Now, those prices seem to be consistently going up. Even for me, I was actually potentially looking at buying an E30 Touring about 3 or 4 years ago. It was asking under $20,000. That same model now is asking $40,000, even more. So you could suggest that buying an E30 might be a very smart financial decision. But you know what definitely is a smart financial decision? It's hitting the driver link down there. Okay, let's talk about looks for a second here. Hey, BMW, can you start using this as the inspiration for all of your car designs from now on, rather than the shit show that you're currently using? The E30 for me is up there with some of the very best car designs ever. You have all the little details like the Hofmeister kink and the beautiful use of lines and creases, but it works because of the perfect proportions, especially from the front. See, this is where so many modern BMWs just fail for me. With this car, look at the proportion and the balance between the headlights, the grille, and the twin kidneys. It's just so right. It's so cool and classy. And then look at the new 7 Series, the iX and the X7. They are just vulgar. The E30 is cool because it's just understated. A design that screams to the world, hey everyone, I'm a BMW, look at me. That's not cool. And to give you an idea of actual size, and this blew me away, the E30 is just slightly smaller in every dimension than the current Mazda 2 sedan. So it makes the current 3 Series look a bit like a Winnebago. Even though I'm sure we all lust after the iconic and impossibly cool E30 M3, you know there's actually an even more obscure model? It's the South African only 333i, which is basically a 323i powered by the 3.3 litre straight 6 from the E23 733i. And it produced more power and torque than the original M3. Okay, problems and issues inside. Plenty of owners have complained about the instrument cluster failing or certain functions of it failing, and apparently fixing it often isn't cheap. Also, the instrument cluster uses plastic little gears for the trip odometer. Unfortunately, over time, these become mushy and soft and it just stops working. It's not a nightmare to fix, but unfortunately, many owners fail to fix it. Next up, make sure everything powered by electricity actually works. We're talking the power windows, the HVAC, especially the blower motors. Press every button, make sure it works. The problem is there are plenty of reports of electrical gremlins. Sometimes they are just small little problems. Unfortunately, other times these small little problems are actually the first telltale signs of much larger issues. Also, just on the HVAC system as well, a lot of owners have recommended that you upgrade to a better or later model system because these standard ones aren't much chop in Australia. Now, anything made of plastic, which is pretty much the entire interior, these days is getting quite brittle and can crack and break. We're talking switchgear, door handles, parts of the dashboard, cubby holes. Yeah, probably seen better days. Actually, just on the dashboards, they are notorious for cracking. Just like this one, they all do it. The problem is replacing it. The dashboards, they can range from a few $100s to thousands of dollars, depending on the quality of dashboard, but replacing it will take all of the hours. Now, chances are the speakers for the stereo, they've seen better days by now, and obviously the infotainment systems, there's no levels of phone connectivity here. If it's got a standard system, which chances are it doesn't, replace it. Even the aftermarket systems that many examples will feature, they're probably pretty old now, just update it. Okay, this next one is a bit gross. Feel the carpets for any signs of moisture. If they are moist, unfortunately, underneath, there's probably a good chance some corrosion or rust is forming. Other than that, other owners have just complained that it feels like when you fix one thing, 2 other things break, and to fix anything requires you to have like the arms and hands of a toddler because there are many little nooks and crevices you need to get into. BMW's iDrive infotainment tech is often regarded as one of the best in the automotive industry, and the 6-cylinder E30's check panel could almost be seen as iDrive's great-great-grandparent. The system is incredibly simple and indicates low oil, low coolant, headlight and tail light failures, amongst other key information. The coolest part about these check panels are that they are deadly accurate. Unless one of the sensors has been disconnected, they simply can't be wrong. Just like iDrive, they make sense. Now, as far as features go, we are talking about a car that's 30 to 40 years old. Forget any modern levels of technology. You're going to get stuff like air conditioning, power windows, maybe some central locking, and a few other bits and pieces, but that's about it. Now, the interior design overall doesn't really change across the entire life cycle of the car. The 6-cylinder models, they generally have slightly more premium feeling materials and a few more colors to choose from. Speaking of things to choose from, try and hunt for examples that have the sports seats fitted or any of the design package options. Now, as far as safety features go, look, during the 1980s, safety wasn't exactly the highest priority. Plus, it's a very small, light, rear-wheel drive, semi-performance car, so of course it's not all that safe. But the fact that we're in Sydney, in a car from the 1980s, it does seem only appropriate that to take you through the safety features, we do this in a 1980s Sydney FM radio style.
G'day and welcome back to E30 FM, and if you're headed for a crash, you might want to consider an alternative, because all that's keeping you safe is seatbelts, disc brakes and doors. Although the doors, the sheet metal is paper thin. ABS and an airbag might be available on certain examples, but forget stability or traction control or any modern safety gear. You're on your own to keep this thing on track.
Now, if you do need all of the specific details and the ultimate used E30 buyer's guide, get on ReDriven.com and check out the incredible and totally free cheat sheet. It'll answer all of your questions. Now, as far as the interior vibe in here goes, I honestly was expecting this to feel incredibly small, but it doesn't. It's not spacious by any means, but because of the small A-pillars and the light colors, it feels more spacious than you're expecting. There are quirky things, but seats, comfort-wise, they're not the most comfortable seats and they're not the most supportive. I actually have sat in the optional sports seats in an E21 and they were fantastic. Also, the seating position, the pedals are offset to the right, so that takes a little bit of getting used to. And even where the steering wheel is, I don't know if you can see this, but it's more over my left leg than my right leg. So if you've got a dodgy spine like mine, it doesn't feel too bad. If you're completely aligned, this might be frustrating. As far as other ergonomics go, because the dash is angled towards you, classic BMW thing, everything is really easy to use. It's great. Now, practicality wise, it's okay. You've got a spot, amazingly, perfectly sized for your phone just here. Obviously, you've got an ashtray and a cigarette lighter. That's disgusting, but it was the 80s, so smoking was weirdly cool back then. Gross. There's a massive glove box. You do have door bins, but they're on the thin side, and this car does have aftermarket cup holders. Now, plenty of owners have complained that the E30s don't have cup holders, but I'm going to show you a trick. Because you don't have anywhere for a bottle normally, just take off the shoes you're wearing and pop the water bottle or your coffee into the shoe, and then that way, put it down there and it doesn't go anywhere. Now, as far as wear and tear goes, this is amazing. I'm not sure if you remember what the graphic said at the start of this video, but this car has over 607,000 kilometers on it, and the only things that have been replaced are the steering wheel, and it's got a dash mat to hide the cracking underneath. But as far as wear and tear goes, okay, there's some rips in the driver's seat. After 600,000 Ks, surely that's to be expected. But the passenger seat, great condition. The carpets are good. Door cards are good. Even like high traffic areas, all the plastic texture is still there. Probably because it's all quite hard plastics, honestly. But 607,000 Ks and the interior looks this good. How? Now, obviously, each E30's interior, as far as wear and tear, is going to vary from car to car, but this one, amazing. Mainly because David, that owns it, is an absolute legend. Not only because he lent us this brilliant car, but because he makes my small pretentious coffees for me at Common, at Epping, not every morning, but a lot of mornings. David, you're a legend, mate. Also, if you'd like to be a legend like David and want to lend us a cool car to feature on ReDriven, let us know in the comments below or hit us up on the socials. Did you know BMW's very first Z car, the Z1, was based on the E30 325i platform and running gear? Now in the backseat, I'm exactly the same height as American musician and E30 aficionado Tyler, the Creator. This is in my driving position, and you know what? It's surprisingly good for how small the car is. Okay, my knees are smashing up against the back of the seat. There's basically no footroom and there's a huge transmission tunnel, so not a lot of space, but the seats themselves are really, really comfortable. It's better than you'd think. Still a bit small, but. As far as features and practicality, back here you have a spot for your ashtray. smoking is disgusting. There are no door pockets. Fun fact, even though the fronts have power windows, the backs have manual windows, and that's about it. Not much else practicality-wise back here. As far as wear and tear in the back seat goes, not too bad. A few little scratches here and there, that's to be expected. The actual fabric could do with a detail and make it a bit cleaner. The roof lining, this is a bit of a common problem with these. The roof lining can dip. Luckily, David has fitted ultra lightweight, aerodynamically designed staples to keep that in place, which is good and doesn't add any to the weight of the car. And the door cards are all in really good shape. For 600,000 Ks or more, it's good. Now, as far as space and practicality in the boot goes, being the touring, or the wagon version of the E30, this is obviously the most practical of all the E30s. Also being the wagon, it's the coolest. But as far as actual space goes back here, I reckon it's slightly larger than that of, say, a Volkswagen Golf, something like that. Also, the seats obviously fold down, not completely flat, but great amount of space for a little car. I should mention the horizontal part of the seat, it can flip up so the seats do fold flat. Like many E30s out there, this one obviously isn't exactly standard, but we feel it's a really good representation of semi-sensible levels of mods. The engine in this has been swapped, but not to anything too crazy. But interestingly, this now has the same power to weight ratio as the current M235i. So does it feel quick? Yeah, yeah, it feels just the right amount of rapid. And the thing is, even if it isn't technically as quick on paper, it feels a lot quicker than an M235i. Also, this car has been fitted with a short shifter and a very lightweight flywheel. It does take a little bit of getting used to, but I tell you what, I think this is how all cars should feel coming out of the factory. Also, I was expecting the ride to be incredibly harsh. Look, it is on the firm side, obviously, but these BC coilovers, they're firm, but they're pretty easy to live with. Overall, it feels like you're driving an incredibly muscular, yet very practical old school Mazda MX-5, so therefore, perfect. Okay, at times it can feel a little bit sketchy, and yes, everything rattles. Weirdly, but it still feels very high quality. I don't know how it does that. And anyway, all of that, it just adds to the occasion. In so many modern cars, even performance cars, you don't feel like you're part of the equation when it comes to driving. But with this, you feel completely intrinsic to what's going on. You are as important as the car itself. Also, unlike so many modern performance cars, you don't have to be going fast to get the most characteristics out of it. Like a new Volkswagen Golf R is incredibly rapid, but below 7/10, it just feels like every other Golf. This just feels special no matter what the speed, no matter what the scenario. But other negatives, well, I'll be honest, I can't seem to shake this sense of concern that I might be injured or even die if I hit anything larger than a pigeon. And also, all the little mechanical and even electronic sounds and weird feelings, that fills me with concern that something might go wrong. Also, it's about 45 degrees today in here in Sydney, but that means it's about 65 degrees inside this car, so some air conditioning would be bloody nice. But look, this is an absolutely brilliant car to drive. It's small and compact enough to park easily and drive in the city, yet at the same time it exudes so much character, and it's the right amount of terrifying all the time.
Okay, now these things are at the age where it's not really a case of what goes wrong, it's more of a case of how the hell has it survived? Has it been dragged out of a yard somewhere full of rust? Or has it been lovingly cared for, again, probably still full of rust? Or is it modified, or is it an unfinished project? Now, there are plenty of those around, but it's also likely to have some rust in it. And speaking of old car things, yes, one of the problems with these is the fuel tanks. Well, they rust from the inside out, so if you're doing one or restoring one or even have one, get that fuel tank looked at because they are known for that. And again, age-related things, everything made of rubber. The brake lines, the cooling system hoses, every single rubber thing is going to be less rubbery than it should, so highly recommended you get that sorted out too. Now, as far as the standard engines in these, look, all of the options were actually a pretty stout engine for their time. Although these days, if they've never been rebuilt, they're guaranteed to be leaking oil and blowing smoke and burning oil. Now, if it's been unmolested, it's either a carby or it's got the Bosch L-Jetronic or the Motronic injection systems on there. For their age, they were okay, but these days they can be a bit problematic, so expect some issues with that. Now, because of the age of these engines and just how good these things can be, it's a very common platform for engine swaps. Now, as far as the BMW engines, the M54 and S54 are pretty common swaps, and they're great. And aside from the BMW engines, you'll see plenty of Honda K swaps and even LS V8s. And that's just to name a few. There are plenty of options. There's probably some out there with a bloody steam engine swap. And also there are some out there with EV swaps as well. Look, there's nothing wrong with EV swaps and conversions, but just not in this car. It's not this car. It's just sacrilege. Now, each of those engine swaps, will have its own set of issues, and there's so many alternatives we can't possibly talk about them all here. But one thing you do need to be careful of is the legalities. Engineering aside, if it's done right, you might be able to get it across the line, but some areas just will not let you do engine swaps. So make sure it's legal for your area, and also check with your insurance company, make sure you can still insure the thing. And of course, aside from the legal issues, you just have to make sure that any conversion has actually been done right. Now, in a perfect world, those engine swaps will have been done in a reputable workshop, but just be careful because there are plenty of backyard conversions out there where the engine's held in with gaffer tape and zip ties. Now, if it checks out with the very long laundry list of all the potential issues, or it's a vehicle you are prepared to spend an immense amount of time and money on, well then yeah, a very good thing. I actually still lose sleep over the one I didn't buy a few years ago for a ridiculously cheap price, and yeah, very disappointed.
So it's important to understand that buying an E30, it's a bit like the car equivalent of buying the worst house in the best location. See, it's going to require constant work, things will need to be repaired and modified, and you'll question if it's really worth the hassle and the cost. That is until you get to live with it when it's at its best, because there's the most incredible feeling of satisfaction you get when you get to experience the results of your hard work. Plus, these things are only going up in value, so a bit like someone that bought and then renovated a shitty apartment in Sydney 15 years ago, the right E30 restored or enhanced correctly could be a hell of an investment. However, in saying that, plenty of E30s out there have lived very hard lives and have been abused and neglected. Also, plenty have been started with owners with the best intentions as a project car, but then have just run out of time and tolerance. Please make sure you tick all of those critical pre-purchase inspection boxes, and if you're willing to commit to the long-term relationship that these require, my God, yes, you should buy one. If that doesn't sound like you, no. Don't buy one of these, maybe buy one of these instead. But if you weren't to buy this or this, what would you buy instead? Let us know in the comments below. See you next time. Technology, you will probably...
Now, speaking of being unmolested, these things are
and these are massive in the aftermarket tuning. Oh, damn it, last word, my brain stopped. Okay.